first we will look at the definition. So these are all definitions of what exactly is Vijnanamaya Kosha, because we already did the Manomaya Kosha. And so people might wonder, like, if you've already done the mind or a mental sheath, what else is left? And this is what, we see from most like today understanding, also from a scientific perspective. Our understanding is that there is mind, mental sheath. So what are the functions of the mind? The mind thinks, the mind controls the senses, the mind controls our organs of perception and all those things. But we don't really understand that there is another subtler aspect to what we define as the mind. And this is most clearly expressed here in our Vedantic text in what is called as Vijnanamaya Kosha. So what is this Vijnanamaya Kosha? So first he says here, Buddhir Indriya. So there is intellect. So this is when he says intellect, so he's already kind of used a different term. It is not mano. First we were talking about mano. So there it was mind, mental sheath. So here buddhi, intellect. So buddhi indriya, then the organs, the perception organs of the buddhi. So there's something that has to connect the mind and the intellect, and then what is it with its thought modifications? So it also has some thinking capacity, but it's a much more subtle and more, of a different nature of thought, which we will come to. So one of the main points here is it has kartru lakshana. So we have been, those of you who've been attending the Bhagavad Gita classes, so we have discussed this at length, kartrutva. In fact, yesterday we discussed about it, So kartrutva, what follows kartrutva? Yeah. Yeah. So kartrutva is the cause, of our bhoktrutva. Like what is bhoktrutva is a sense of enjoyer, sense of suffering, and all that we experience. This comes from this notion of doership. So first there is doership, and because we have a sense of doership, why, of course, we can also say that, that because we have a sense of enjoyership, our doership is activated. But at the more fundamental level, we are starting off with doership, and that leads us to our experience of good and bad, bhoktrutva. Bhoktrutva meaning that enjoyership or the one who is suffering, whoever is experiencing the results. So if you have some, if you hurt somebody, then you will suffer some causes, some repercussions of that. So that is some suffering according to the law of karma. And more fundamentally is like your own thoughts. You will cause some disturbance in your thinking. And then same thing if you do some good act, or even if you do some puja, meditation, you experience a sense of joy, a positive state, calmness. So all this is, there is a kartrutva and there is a bhoktrutva. There is a doer and you get the results of that action. So now what has happened is he's explaining what is this kartrutva lakshana do, is that it actually is the cause of transmigration. Samsara karanam. So this is a karanam. Karanam is followed by karya, cause and effect. So there is a cause. What is the cause of this? This is the cause, is this Vijnanamaya Kosha. And what is the effect is the samsara. Samsara meaning this is the transmigration. One is caught up in this transmigration, life after life, So forcibly, you have to not just die, you also have to be reborn somewhere. And you have to again go through the experiences, of being in the mother's womb and going through, the stages of growing up and everything, and all the, we can say there are also good things, but even that kind of good thing is already mixed with some kind of unhappiness, because eventually it has to end. It has to, you have everyone has to die, right? So that is the samsara karanam. So now what is, he goes on further and he says, anuvrajait, accompanied with what? So what is this Vijnanamaya Kosha? Essentially, Vijnana Sanyaha. So what do we call this Vijnana? Is that it has Chit Pratibimba Shaktihi. So this is a very fundamental definition for Vijnanamaya Kosha. It has the power of Chit. And how does it power manifest? As a reflection, Pratibimba. So the power of reflection of the pure consciousness, the one eternal consciousness, is reflected in this Vijnanamaya Kosha. So now what has happened is this pure consciousness that was reflected is this essence of this God, we can say, a Brahman, the Nirguna Brahma. That essence of that consciousness, what has happened is it has undergone vikara, modification, and then it has become gnana kriyavan. So it has become gnana, knowledge and action. So now how does that manifest? Aham iti. It is manifesting as aham, 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 aham. So the sense of I, this constant sense of I, ajasram, always it is always saying I. And what does it do further? If it stops with that, then it's still not that much of a problem. But it identifies with the body, sense organs, and with that, what happens? The sense of all this, the joy of the body, the suffering of the body, the suffering caused by the mind, all that is experienced further on. So the actual experience is experienced at the Manomaya Kosha, the sorrows, happiness, and also all that. It's all as experienced in the Manomaya Kosha. But the root of that is coming because there is an I-ness. And what does this I-ness do? The first sense of I-ness is it identifies with this body and mind. And then what it does is it starts saying, this is me and this is mine, and that is not mine. So this classification starts coming. And this is the cause of all suffering, because once we start identifying with this aspect of me and mine, then what happens? Then there is all the differentiation that starts manifesting from that. And now he goes on to explain further on, so how does it manifest? He says it's from anadi. It is like it doesn't have a beginning. So just like how avidya was described in the earlier stages, the sense of I-ness which we get, the sense of aham swabhava. He says, I am aham swabhava. This and this is me, that this becomes natural. Swabhava, it becomes natural to me. That I always have the sense of I-ness, even if I may change my name, but the sense of I-ness does not go. So this will always stay, this aham swabhava, as long as we have this jiva bhava. What is this jiva in English? We call it as the embodied self. And this is the cause of samasta vyavahara voda, all the transactions, everything we do, in a daily basis. So on a practical level, like I identify myself as so and so, and you identify yourself as so and so, and we interact. And not just that, everything in my life is dictated by the sense of this jiva bhava. And then it karoti, karmani, all the actions, And how does this actions come about? And now here is the problem. If actions came spontaneously, there's no problem. The actions, he says, are coming from purva vasanaha. So it is coming from our previous tendencies. So we carry with the jiva the imprint of all these tendencies. And what does these tendencies do? It gives us a sense of punyani, apunyani, good and bad, good or evil. and the results. We, based on this, we do good actions, we do bad actions, and we are bound by the results of those actions. And now what this experiences, what we are going through, bhungte vichitrasu, in various way, and how do we experience this results of our good and bad actions? We are born in vichitrasu api yonishu. In many bodies, in many wombs, we take birth again and again. And vrajan ayati, meaning you are just you are wandering, you come, niryati, you go, meaning like this is a transmigration. It's going on for always. We don't have the memory of it, but just looking at our latent tendencies, we can see, this tendencies we have had, not just inculcated just from this life or our environment. Some tendencies we have, just as how somebody is born as a child prodigy, as a musician. In them, it's very apparent. Some tendencies they carry from before. But like that, all of us carry tendencies, not just those child prodigies. So this is that Vijnanamayasya, what happens is it also gives us the experience of this Jagrat Swapnadi, meaning Jagrat Swapna Sushuptadi, and this Sukha Dukkha Bhoga. So main problem here is that until this Jagrat Swapna Sushupti, we don't care. But the problem is that it gives us this is the cause for our constant fluctuating ephemeral sense of happiness and sorrow. We are constantly having happiness, we are constantly having sorrow. It is there constantly, but it is not constant. Meaning that sukha itself is not constant. The dukkha also is not constant, but it's constantly coming and going. Why? Because as long as we have this jiva bhava, this sense is always there. So this Vijnanamaya, he's kind of putting it in a very subtle, simplified way. What this is it is also explained very well by the two shlokas in Upadesha Saram. Those of you who attended the Upadesha Saram, here that I sense, he says, this Ramana Maharshi's, that essence of Ramana Maharshi's teachings in there was, ahamayam kuto bhavati chinvataha aipatatyaham nija vicharanam. So he says, you forget about everything. You just inquire into this I thought. Where does this I thought come from? With a vigilant, active mind. And then what happens is, aipatatyaham, this will fall. The sense of I will fall. And that search, this is a real search. This is a real sadhana, he says. He says there is only one essential sadhana, and this is the quest of this ego or this I, jiva bhava. And then he goes on to say, ahamin ashabaj yahamaham taya spurati vritsvayam paramapurna sat. And then when you pursue this I sense completely until that sense of individual ego has dropped, then you experience the true I-ness, which he calls as, it vibrates as aham, ahaminantam spurati hrutsaya. This is the paramapurna sat. This is the true reality. This is the end of all sadhanas, he says. This is the end, ultimate pursuit, that quest which he calls as who am I. So just to summarize, in Vedanta, we have actually this, what he called as Chit Pratibimba, It is actually classified in three different kind of, in Advaita Vedanta itself, there are three ways actually they have come up with defining this Pratibimba. So here Pratibimba means reflection of the pure consciousness which is happening in the intellect. And what does it do? It gives me the sense of I. So that pure consciousness, you know, when it first manifests in me, I get the sense of I, pratibimba. The other ways of describing this are there, called as avachedavada and abhasavada and all that, uh, which is like different was, and from that comes what is called as chidabhasa. Jiva is called as chidabhasa. So they say that chidabhasa is also a form of jiva, is the essence of jiva according to that abhasavada, where this consciousness is reflected in us, and this mistakes itself to be this entity, but it is of the nature of pure consciousness. Now, when it first undergoes this kind of a wrong notion, or it starts reflecting in this finite instrument, the traces of that finitude kind of stays with that. The traces kind of its limitations stays with that. So although it has a sense of it has an eternal sense, meaning it has a sense that it is never subject to death. Yet it behaves as though it is like going through these changes. So this is the Chidabhasa concept of Chidabhasa, where Jiva, our consciousness, why we sometimes call it as sometimes as a soul and all that, is that because inherently it is pure. It is like that infinite spirit, that consciousness, that one eternal undivided consciousness, Nitya Shuddha Mukta Buddha consciousness. Of that Nirguna Brahma. That consciousness is that same consciousness, but we have the sense of the soul, the sense of that pure nature is still retained. So the pure nature is never ever affected by all this experience, by punya, papa, and all that. That does not taint that soul. What we call as that, if we take it as a soul, it doesn't taint that in sense. But as long as that we still have that finitudeness of that soul or identification of that soul, then it is that ego. It is not that pure consciousness yet. So in that sense, like when we talked about all the Visishta Advaita or the Dvaita Advaita also, there is that pure nature. They also kind of acknowledge, that pure nature is still there. But what happens is this pure nature, the separated individual pure nature is not equated to that eternal consciousness. Why? Because then that sense of ego will take over, and to maintain that sense of ego, to rather eliminate that sense of ego, the sense of division is created. And we sustain as a sadhaka, it is good that somebody has the sense of division, so then we can acknowledge divine in things. We can acknowledge also, the pure teachings that comes from acharyas, gurus, and all that. Knowing that there is something higher, something infinite. So as a jiva, our conception can be like that, or we can hold on to that conception. But as we ultimately come to our pure nature, as we go through the purification, through the sadhana, the reflection is pure. It's just like somebody is in a mirror, somebody is standing in the mirror. He's looking at an image of the mirror. What is he looking really? He's actually looking at himself, he's not looking really at that reflection. So that essential understanding is what is Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta trying to convey, that has in essence, we are pure consciousness itself. It's just like, or the other example is like that sun, the sun is there and the sun's reflection might be in a vessel with water, and that reflection might be there. We might say that it's a sunlight, the reflection of the sun. But what is it actually? It is actually the sun itself, the sunlight itself is in there. So this is the fundamental difference. And So one way to do this sadhana is this go directly into the sense of doership which we have. And this is what Bhagavad Gita is trying to convey in, especially in the teachings of Karma Yoga and all that. What we're trying to go is to the sense of Kartrutva Bhava, the sense of I am the doer. As long as we have the sense of Kartrutva Bhava, we are not able to do what is called as Kartavya. Our responsibilities also we're not able to properly fulfill. Why? Because the sense of I kind of supersedes everything. So this is why I will come back to the conclude with Ramana Maharshi's what his inquiry was. He says, when you can inquire into who am I, he was not asking us to just stop with the sense that I'm not the body. That is kind of obvious. What he was trying to point us to is the sense of I-ness, which persists in especially very strongly in our waking state. The moment we wake up, the first thought that comes to us is I exist, or I am perceiving this, or I am here. And this sense, that I-ness that manifests, that is that Vijnanamaya Kosha, that buddhi that says that ego-ness. And from there, everything, all our day-to-day activities starts manifesting. So until we are able to go to that root, and inquire into this root of this ego, our sadhana is never complete. This is what he was trying to mention, that he says you can do all sadhanas, but they are for purification of the mind. He says, like, in the Upadesha Saram that many of you attended, this is what he said, you should do all the sadhanas because the mind becomes very pure then. And then you are able to inquire deeply into the sense of I-ness. And what happens when you inquire, you see that there is this I thought that comes, that is always kind of, see, every thought we have, there is two aspects of this thought. This is the idam vritti and aham vritti. Idam is this object thought. So I see all of you now, on my computer screen. So this is that object thought. I am seeing all of you. But this is accompanied by I am seeing this. So this I thought first emerges, based on which all of you are perceived. So everything in this creation, before I objectively perceive anything, there is a sense of subjective perception. And this, when the subjective perception is inquired into deeply, very deeply, meaning that every sense of object thought, we should be able to see this subject thought. Every sense of thought I have, I should be able to see this I-ness, the sense of I. Then what happens? That I, he says, will fall apart. Why it will fall apart is because then we realize that this sense of I is also coming and going. It is also not nitya. And then that what is then nitya is that sense of consciousness, and which he calls as Satchit. That he says is the ultimate thing, after that there is no more inquiry, he says. There is no more, because that source of the doership itself is eliminated. The one who was inquiring itself, has been kind of unveiled. Okay, so I think this is good for today. This Vijnanamaya's teachings is actually very fundamental Advaita Vedanta, and in many aspects of his teachings, Shankaracharya actually talks about this in a very deep sense, and many other teachers, who explain the essence of Advaita Vedanta without all the Shastras. Also they took this as the essence, because they said if you can understand this, then you can pretty much get to the heart of Advaita Vedanta. So many teachers, like we hear about, like Nisargadatta Maharaji, who also wrote, I am that, his essence of his teachings was focusing on this Vijnanamaya Kosha aspect of inquiry. Okay, so having said that, I will conclude the class. I'll say a prayer, and then those of you who want to ask any questions, you can stay back and ask.